The morning sun stretched its golden arms across the city, painting Manila in a soft, forgiving light. For most, it was just another day, another set of routines, another page in the endless grind. But for Aurelia Velasquez, known simply as Leah to her friends, today felt monumental. It was her first day at a real office job. She stood before the small cracked mirror in her rented apartment, adjusting the simple beige blazer she had borrowed from her friend Flora. It wasn't new, threads at the cuff were slightly frayed, and the fabric had faded from years of use, but Leah wore it with pride. She tucked a lock of wavy brown hair behind her ear, trying to look professional, even if nerves fluttered wildly inside her chest. "Today is the day," she whispered to herself, clutching the worn leather bag that contained her resume, a second-hand phone the company had loaned her, and a small notebook filled with hopeful scribbles. "Please, Lord, let this be the beginning of something good." From the kitchen table, Flora, her older friend and housemate, chuckled as she watched Leah's nervous rehearsal. "Naku, Leah, you look so serious." "Relax, Pero. I have to warn you," Flora said, raising an eyebrow. "Your boss, Mr. Tadeos, they say he's the most terrifying man in the entire company. Pinaka-terror da siya." Leah blinked, startled. "Terror? You mean, strict?" "Strict is an understatement," Flora replied, crossing her arms. "He scares away secretaries like flies. Walang nagtatagal sa kanya ingisang buwan. They resign crying, some don't even last a week." For a moment, Leah's heart sank. But then she straightened her back, gripping her bag tighter. "If others can't handle him, maybe I can. I've survived tougher things," ate Flora. "I grew up in an orphanage, remember? I won't run just because someone is strict." Flora gave her a half-smile, both proud and worried. "That's the spirit. But promise me you'll be careful. He doesn't like mistakes." By the time Leah arrived at the towering glass building of Everhart and Company, her palms were clammy. The lobby buzzed with employees, polished floors reflecting heels and leather shoes, the scent of expensive perfume hanging faintly in the air. She felt small, out of place in her borrowed blazer, but she lifted her chin high. Her name was called during the roll. A deep, stern voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Aurelia Velasquez." She hesitated a second too long before raising her hand. The man calling her, Mr. Tadeos Everhart, lifted his head, his sharp brows knitting together. His gaze found her at the back of the group. It was a look that could freeze rivers. "Yes, sir," Leah stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, but she forced her hand higher. "Late to respond," he said coldly. "Do you have a complaint about my tone, Miss Velasquez?" Gasps rippled among the other employees. Leah felt her throat close, but something inside her refused to shrink. "No, sir," she said quickly, then added, voice steadier, "but I hope you won't judge me so quickly. I may be new, but I have skills and qualities worth proving, if you give me a chance." Murmurs filled the room. A secretary daring to answer back? Leah's cheeks burned, but she held his gaze. Tadeos crossed his arms over his chest, his broad frame radiating authority. "Is that so? We'll see. But remember this, I don't keep useless people in my office. If you can't deliver, you're gone." His words were like ice water, but Leah only nodded. "Understood, sir." For a flicker of a second, his eyes softened, not much but enough for her to notice. Then it was gone, replaced by the same cold mask. 3 hours into the day, Leah was already juggling a pile of paperwork, a ringing phone, and instructions barked from behind Tadeos's large mahogany desk. He never raised his voice, but every word carried the weight of command. "Coffee. Black. No sugar. Schedule the meeting with the board. And don't confuse the time, like the last one did. Print these documents. Staple them correctly. Details matter." Her head spun, but she forced herself to keep up, muttering silent prayers under her breath. At one point, when she fumbled with the copier, she thought she saw him smirk, almost amused at her struggle, but the moment vanished too quickly to be sure. By lunchtime her legs ached, her blouse clung with sweat, and her mind screamed for a break. She slipped into the pantry hoping for peace, but Tadeos appeared at the doorway, arms crossed. "You're eating with them?" he asked, nodding toward a group of staff sharing food. Leah blinked. "Yes, sir." "Why not?" "You smell like sweat. Shower first next time. I don't want my secretary sitting around reeking in public." His tone was sharp, his eyes unreadable. Her cheeks flushed crimson. I didn't bring a change of clothes today, sir. I promise I'll be more careful tomorrow. Please excuse me just this once." For a long moment, silence stretched. Then he sighed almost imperceptibly. "Fine. But if you repeat this, don't bother showing up." Yes, sir, she whispered. As he walked away, Leah exhaled shakily. Flora had been right, he was terrifying. And yet, beneath the harsh words, she thought she sensed something else. Something guarded. Something wounded. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. No, he's just a cold-hearted boss. Nothing more. But deep inside, a spark of curiosity flickered. The following morning, Leah arrived at the office earlier than anyone else. Her heart still raced from yesterday's encounter with her boss, but she had promised herself, and Flora, that she wouldn't be defeated so easily. She had washed her blazer, pressed it as neatly as she could, and even braided her hair so she'd look more professional. By the time Tadeos arrived, tall and imposing in his charcoal gray suit, Leah was already at her desk with folders lined up like soldiers. She stood as he entered, clutching her notepad tightly. "Morning, sir," she said, trying to sound confident. He gave her a quick glance, his eyes flickering briefly over the neat pile of papers. "We'll see how long that lasts," he muttered before striding into his office. Leah exhaled, then followed him in with her notebook. "The test." "Sit," he said curtly, pointing at the chair opposite his desk. "I want to see how much you can actually handle. Yesterday was just a warm-up." Leah nodded, pen ready. "You'll coordinate 3 meetings today. One with the finance team at 10 a.m., one with the board at 1 p.m., and another with the Everhart Foundation donors at 4 p.m. The catch is the conference rooms are overbooked. You'll need to juggle schedules and secure a venue without causing a mess. If you fail, you'll be gone by tomorrow." Her stomach dropped. 3 high-profile meetings in one day? And no rooms available? It felt impossible. But instead of panicking, she lifted her chin. "Understood, sir. I'll make it work." For the first time, a faint smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. "We'll see if you're all talk, Miss Velasquez." The struggle. The next hours blurred into chaos. Leah dashed between departments, pleading with managers to swap conference room slots, making frantic phone calls, and even begging the janitor to unlock a storage hall that could be cleaned and turned into a makeshift meeting space. At one point, Cyrus, the younger Everhart cousin, appeared in the hallway, leaning casually against the wall. His grin was mischievous. Well, he drawled, eyeing her flustered face. "So you're the new secretary everyone's whispering about. Tadeos' latest victim." Leah frowned, not slowing her pace. "I don't have time for games." "Excuse me." But Cyrus stepped in front of her, holding out a hand as if in mock chivalry. "Relax. I could help, for a price." "I said excuse me," she snapped, ducking past him. His laughter followed her down the hall. "Fiery. No wonder he's keeping you around, for now." The confrontation. By noon, Leah had miraculously managed to secure all 3 venues. She returned to Tadeos' office, her hair slightly messy, blazer wrinkled, but her eyes blazing with determination. She placed the finalized schedules neatly on his desk. He glanced over them, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up, meeting her gaze with an intensity that made her throat dry. "You actually pulled it off," he said flatly. "Of course I did," Leah replied, her voice firmer than she felt. "You thought I'd fail, didn't you?" Tadeos leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Most people would have. You don't even have proper experience." "But," his voice dropped lower, "you surprised me." Heat rushed to her cheeks, but she refused to look away. "I told you not to judge me so quickly. I'm not here to play games, sir. I need this job. And I'll prove I can handle it." For a moment, silence filled the room, thick with tension. His eyes searched hers as if testing how far her resolve could go. Then, abruptly, he stood, gathering the folders. "Fine. Don't get too comfortable. One victory doesn't make you indispensable. A small victory." When he walked out, Leah let out the breath she'd been holding. Her legs trembled, but she couldn't stop the small smile spreading across her lips. She had survived another day, and earned a flicker of respect from her impossible boss. That evening, back at the small apartment, Flora noticed the faint sparkle in Leah's eyes. "Don't tell me you're starting to like your boss?" Flora teased, raising a brow. Leah quickly shook her head, flustered. "No, of course not. He's insufferable." "But," she trailed off, fiddling with her spoon, "he's not as heartless as he looks." Flora smirked knowingly. "Careful, Leah. Some fires burn too hot to play with." Leah turned away, hiding the warmth on her cheeks. But deep inside she wondered, was Flora right? Or was she simply imagining things? The week pressed down like a stack of heavy folders. By Tuesday morning, Leah had learned the company's geography by heart. HR on 12, Legal on 14, Finance on 18, Board Lounge on 30, and also learned where whispers tended to collect, the pantry and the elevator banks. She arrived before 8 again, breath misting in the chilly lobby air as she signed in. The guard greeted her by name now, a small kindness that felt larger than it should. When the elevator doors slid open, she stepped in alongside 2 employees she didn't know. "That's her," one murmured as if Leah were a headline, not a person. "The new one? Pretty. Let's see if she lasts 2 weeks, the other replied, light as gossip always is for people who won't pay its cost. Leah faced forward, jaw clenched, pretending the polished steel doors were mirrors and she belonged in the reflection. "Last 2 weeks? Watch me last longer," she told herself. At her desk, she reorganized her boss's day, updated call sheets, synced the calendar to 3 time zones, set gentle buffers around meetings so he'd have breathing space. He would never admit he needed breathing space. Then the office door opened. Tadeos entered without glancing up from his phone, coat perfectly cut, tie a dark slash against a white shirt. "Coffee," he said like a clock chiming the hour. "Black hot. And don't let it sit." "Yes, sir." She was already moving. "Also, confirm the 10:30 compliance check. And push the donors to 4:30. If they ask why, tell them the truth. The CO doesn't do small talk before lunch." "I'll handle it," she said, tapping notes into her pad. He paused, eyes flicking to the pad, then to her face. "You switched to shorthand?" "I make fewer mistakes if I write fast." A non-committal sound escaped him, somewhere between a grunt and reluctant approval. Then he disappeared into his office, glass door sighing shut behind him. Pantry weather. By noon, the pantry buzzed with mid-level chatter and the plasticky clatter of cutlery. Leah queued for rice and a small chicken stew, trying not to think about yesterday's scolding. She had showered at dawn, braided her hair, changed into a fresh blouse tucked under the same old blazer. She carried her tray to a corner table where Nina from HR waved. "Sit with us," Nina said brightly. "You need allies." Before Leah could sit, Cyrus swept in like a breeze that refused to close doors. "Ladies," he drawled, leaning a hip against the table. "Has the dragon terrorized our new friend yet?" "Good afternoon to you too," Leah said evenly. He grinned. "I take it that's a yes." "Don't worry, I can teach you how to make him blink." From behind them, a quiet voice cut through. "Blink at what?" The pantry stilled instinctively. Tadeos stood in the doorway, unreadable. Cyrus straightened but didn't lose his smirk. "At your dazzling charm, dear cousin," Cyrus said. "We were just welcoming your secretary to the wonderful world of corporate dining." Tadeos's gaze slid to the tray in Leah's hands. "Sit," he said, but to her surprise, he took the tray from her and set it down himself. To everyone else it looked like an act of control, a display. To Leah, who had learned to survive on crumb-sized gestures, it felt like something else. He pivoted to Cyrus. "Don't loiter in the pantry making noise. People are trying to eat." "People or your people?" Cyrus shot back, but he was already stepping away, 2-finger salute tossed lazily over his shoulder. When the door closed, conversation resumed in a ragged wave. Nina leaned toward Leah, eyes wide. "He never comes in here." Leah forced a smile and picked up her spoon. The stew was lukewarm. It tasted like nerves. The fever. By mid-afternoon, a slow warmth crawled up Leah's neck. She tried to ignore the headache creeping from temple to temple, but the screen blurred when she drafted minutes for the compliance debrief. She squeezed her eyes shut, then blinked them clear, just as the office door opened. "Brief me," Tadeo said, setting a file on the desk. He stopped, frowning. "You're flushed." "I'm fine," she said automatically. "It's just the air conditioning." He stepped closer. She could smell cool cologne and printer ink on his sleeves. "No. Fever." He pointed to her chair. "Sit." She opened her mouth. "I still need to," but he was already at the credenza, pulling open a drawer she hadn't noticed. He returned with a blister pack of paracetamol and a small bottle of water, both placed on the desk with clinical efficiency. She blinked. "You keep medicine?" "I keep solutions," he said dryly. "Take 2. Then switch off your screen for 10 minutes. "I can work, sir." He cocked a brow. "And I can replace you. Take the 10-minute break." Leah swallowed the pills, heat and embarrassment mixing in her chest. She lowered her eyes to the notepad so he wouldn't see the gratitude there. When she glanced up, he was already scanning his file again, face returned to stone. But as he turned away, she noticed something new on her desk that hadn't been there that morning. A small gel wrist rest for her keyboard. No note. No comment. Solutions. tightropes and tripwires. The rest of the week unfolded like a complicated choreography. She learned to anticipate his danger, versus his approval. She discovered legal would move mountains if you brought them coffee before asking. She figured out the boardroom projector only worked if you threatened it under your breath. Gossip still swirled. In elevators, in corridors, in the way some women appraised her shoes, her bag, her cadence, as if measuring how long she'd last in a storm they themselves had once failed. Leah learned to smile politely and keep walking. On Thursday evening, a squall slapped the city. By 7:15, most floors were dark except for finance and the CEO's suite. Leah shut down her computer, packed her bag, and looked out at the rain needling the glass. Her cheap umbrella would last 2 blocks at best. She hesitated. The office door opened. Tadeo stood there, jacket off, sleeves rolled. "You're still here?" "I was finishing the queue 3 minutes," she said. "They're in your inbox." He checked his watch. "Go home." He paused, then added, "Wait." He disappeared into his office. When he returned, he held out a long, black umbrella, heavy, expensive, the kind that laughs at wind. "This one doesn't break," he said. "I can't take." "Borrow," he corrected. "Bring it back tomorrow?" She wrapped her fingers around the handle. It fit like the first honest thing she'd held all week. "Thank you, sir." He glanced at her shoes, practical flats already damp at the edges. "And don't step in the curb rivers. They're deeper than they look." A flicker of a smile tugged at her mouth. "Yes, sir." She rode the elevator down alone, umbrella a dark promise against the storm. In the reflection, she saw a woman who had been underestimated and was still standing. The call you don't expect. Friday morning, the office phone buzzed at 6:57 a.m., too early for most sane people, exactly on time for him. Leah snatched it up. "Good morning, Mr. Everhart's office." "Airport," he said. "You'll meet my grandparents' flight. 9:15 a.m., Terminal 3. Hold a placard, Celia and Roberto Everhart. Car will drop you at departures, driver will wait." "The Everharts from Canada?" she asked, flipping to a clean page. A beat of silence. "You know them?" "I heard about them," she said carefully. "From staff. They like to talk," he muttered. "Don't be late. And they may misinterpret." "As your girlfriend?" she said before she could stop herself. He exhaled. "As anything. Keep it simple." "I'm good at simple," she said. "We'll see," he replied, but there was no bite in it. When the line clicked off, Leah set down the receiver and stared at her notes. Her stomach fluttered. This wasn't just an errand, it was an introduction to the roots that had grown him into the man who could command a city and forget to eat lunch. She checked her reflection, retied her braid, and slipped the starched placard into her bag. Rain braided the morning into a gray sheet outside, but inside her chest something bright sparked, a fragile, unnameable thing that wasn't fear. "You belong in your own story," she told herself, and headed for the storm. The airport pulsed with Friday morning energy, families hurrying with luggage, taxi horns blaring outside, the scent of coffee and jet fuel hanging in the air. Leah clutched the placard close to her chest, the bold black letters Celia and Roberto Everhart practically shouting her task to the world. She checked her watch, 9:12. Right on time. The arrivals board blinked. Flight PR 312, landed. Her heart thudded harder. Through the sliding doors, streams of passengers poured out, businessmen dragging carry-ons, children squealing, couples reuniting with kisses. And then she saw them, an elegant older couple walking with the kind of poise that made people glance twice. The man, tall even in his 70s, carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. The woman beside him, silver hair swept into a bun, wore pearls that gleamed under the airport lights. Leah lifted the placard nervously. The woman's eyes lit up. "Oh, Roberto, look. That must be her." They walked straight toward her, bypassing the waiting crowd. Before Leah could speak, the woman took her hands warmly. "You must be Leah. So young, so lovely. Thank you for coming to fetch us. Tadeo's is lucky to have you." Heat rushed to Leah's cheeks. "Ah, welcome to Manila, ma'am, sir. I'm just his girlfriend," the woman finished, eyes twinkling. Leah's mouth opened in panic. "No, I'm his SEC." But Mr. Everhart laughed, deep and booming. "Celia, don't embarrass the girl on her first meeting. Though," his sharp eyes softened as he looked at Leah. "She does look like the kind of woman who could melt ice off my grandson." Leah wanted the tiled floor to swallow her whole. "Truly, I'm just his secretary. That's all." Of course, Celia said, though her smile suggested she didn't believe a word. She looped her arm through Leah's. Come dear, walk us to the car. Tell us about yourself on the way. The car ride. By the time they reached the sleek black company car, the driver had already stowed their luggage. Leah sat in the back with the couple, trying to keep her composure as questions rained down. Where did you grow up? Do you enjoy working with our grandson? Has he been treating you decently? Leah answered as honestly as she could, though she carefully omitted the sharper edges of her daily life. She spoke of the orphanage, of her friend Flora, of her determination to prove herself. Celia clasped her hands, eyes moist. Such resilience. No wonder you caught his attention. She didn't just catch it, Roberto added dryly. If he sent you to fetch us, that means something. He never trusts just anyone with family. Leah shook her head quickly. Please, sir, don't misunderstand. I'm only doing my duty as his secretary. Roberto said, unconvinced. When the car rolled to a stop in front of the Everhart mansion, a sprawling estate with wrought iron gates and stone lions, Leah nearly gasped. She had never seen such grandeur outside of magazines. The mansion. Tadeo's was already waiting on the steps, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. His gaze swept from his grandparents to Leah, lingering on the placard she still clutched like a shield. You made it, he said simply. Of course we did, Roberto replied. And thanks to your charming young secretary here, the trip was smooth. Celia winked. Though you really should tell us sooner if you found someone. Tadeo's. Leah froze. Tadeo's jaw ticked. She's not, he exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. She's not my girlfriend. She works for me. But she's sweet, Celia insisted, patting Leah's arm. Better than those cold society girls you used to bring home. This one has heart. Leah wished the earth would open. Ma'am, really? Enough, Tadeo said firmly, though his eyes flicked to Leah with something unreadable, something that wasn't quite annoyance, wasn't quite indifference either. Let's go inside. You must be tired. Later that evening, back at her apartment, Flora was already waiting with dinner on the table. So, how was it? First field assignment. Leah dropped onto the chair, covering her face with her hands. They thought I was his girlfriend. Flora burst out laughing. What? Oh my gosh. What did you do? I denied it, of course. But his grandmother didn't believe me. She kept saying I was better than his other girlfriends. Flora's laughter softened into a sly grin. Maybe she sees something you don't. Grandmothers know things. Leah groaned. Don't start 8. He's impossible. Cold, bossy, terrifying. She stopped, remembering the umbrella, the medicine, the quiet way he had solved her problems without asking. And complicated. Flora raised an eyebrow. Complicated, huh? That's usually code for interesting. Leah shook her head, stabbing at her food. But the warmth in her cheeks betrayed her. A silent observation. What she didn't know was that across the city, in his office lined with floor-to-ceiling glass, Tadeo sat staring at a file he hadn't read in 10 minutes. His grandparents' words echoed in his head. Better than those cold society girls. She has heart. He clenched his jaw, shutting the file closed. She's just my secretary, he muttered. But the words rang hollow even to himself. Monday mornings at Everhart and Company were always loud, heels clicking on marble floors, phones already ringing before 9, and assistants rushing with arms full of documents. But that morning a different kind of buzz filled the air. Rumors? It started small, a whisper near the coffee machine, a chuckle in the elevator. But by the time Leah stepped onto the 30th floor, every glance in her direction felt weighted. People didn't even bother to lower their voices completely. She's the one who fetched the Everharts at the airport. And the grandmother already approves of her. Secretary? Please. That's just the cover. Leah inhaled slowly, kept her head high, and walked toward her desk. The whispers stung, sharp in the places she worked hardest to protect, but she had learned long ago that silence was armor. Inside the glass office, Tadeo's was already flipping through a folder, his tie perfectly knotted, his posture a wall of control. She set the day's schedule before him. Donors at 4, board prep at 1, vendor meeting rescheduled to 3. He nodded once, then glanced up. His eyes narrowed slightly. Something's wrong. She hesitated, then said quietly, There's talk. About me. About us. For a moment the only sound was the shuffle of papers. Then Tadeo's leaned back in his chair, arms crossing. His voice was calm but ironclad. Listen to me. We don't feed gossip. Animals follow crumbs. If you don't drop any, they starve. Do your job. Let them choke on silence. Her chest tightened, but not from fear. From the strange comfort in his certainty. Yes, sir, she said firmly. He stood, gathering his folder. At the door he added, and if anyone pushes too far, send them to me. The words sank into her bones like a shield. At the pantry. The pantry at noon was a stage, and Leah became the center of it the moment she walked in with her tray. Nina waved her over, but before she could sit, 3 women slid into the table with smiles too sweet to be true. So, one of them drawled, "You're close with the Everharts already." How romantic. Leah smiled politely. It was just an assignment. Of course, another said with mock innocence. And I only wear designer shoes at home. Laughter erupted. Before Leah could answer, a familiar voice cut through, smooth, teasing. Cyrus Everhart. He leaned casually on a chair, eyes glinting. Ladies, don't be cruel. Every great love story starts with an airport pickup. A ripple of laughter spread. Cyrus's grin widened as he turned to Leah. So, tell me, Miss Velasquez, are you the first secretary to earn Lola's blessing, or just the first to survive my cousin's fire-breathing for 2 weeks? Leah set her spoon down, looked him squarely in the eye. Or maybe I'm just the first one good enough at my job. Ooh, sharp tongue, Cyrus chuckled, mock applause in his tone. The pantry door opened. Silence swept the room. Tadeo stepped in, crisp and navy, expression unreadable. He poured himself a cup of coffee, then turned, gaze settling on Leah. Velasquez. After lunch, bring me the Q2 litigation file. Yes, sir, she answered, steady. He looked 1 beat longer, something almost like a warning flicked toward Cyrus, then left without another word. Cyrus leaned closer, voice low. Do you know what he just did? What? He cut the oxygen out of the rumor. Cyrus grinned, but his eyes were sharp. Careful, Leah. That's how you become weather, not just scenery. She met his gaze, calm. And that's how professionals stay dry. His laughter followed her as she left the room. The whisper knife. By mid-afternoon, while fetching water bottles from the service floor, Leah overheard 2 employees. From an orphanage, did you know? Explains why she clings. Girls like that will do anything for security. The words sliced deep. She could have stepped back, avoided them, but instead she stepped inside the elevator with them. Or, she said evenly, eyes fixed on the numbers above the door, some of us just worked twice as hard because we had half as much. Silence. The doors opened on 29, and the whispers stayed behind. The grandmother's eyes. Later that afternoon, during a donor photo op, Celia Everhart appeared, radiant in pearls. She sat beside Leah, watching Tadeo's from across the room. My grandson is difficult, Celia said softly. But men who carry too much too young often are. He cuts like a blade. Sometimes it protects, sometimes it wounds. Leah's fingers tightened on her notepad. He can be severe. Celia smiled knowingly. You, my dear, seem to know the difference. Across the lounge, Tadeo's gaze flicked toward them, lingering just a fraction longer than necessary. He watches you, Celia murmured. Even when he shouldn't. Leah's cheeks burned. Ma'am? Celia, the older woman corrected. Her hand patted Leah's gently. And don't worry. The best stories take time. Don't chase them. Just let them unfold. After hours. By 7, the office was silent except for the hum of lights. Leah stacked the last of the day's files, her body heavy but her spirit strangely light. She had survived the whispers. The glass door slid open. Tadeo stood there, jacket off, tie loosened, eyes shadowed with fatigue. He set a small paper bag on her desk. Eat before you go, he said simply. You forget when days run long. She blinked at the bag. What is it? Panda Sal. Cheese. From the cafe downstairs. His voice dropped, almost awkward. Bring the umbrella back tomorrow too. For a moment she just stared at him, warmth rising in her chest. Thank you, sir. He turned, paused at the door. The rumors, he said without looking back, they'll pass if you let them. Don't waste breath on shadows. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the quiet, the bread, and a heart that wouldn't stop trembling. For the first time since she started, the whispers didn't feel like chains. They felt like background noise, drowning under the sound of something real, something new, quietly beginning. The following week began not with calm but with a storm in a tailored suit, Cyrus Everhart. Unlike his cousin, who cloaked himself in authority and silence, Cyrus entered every room like a spark in dry air, impossible to ignore. He showed up on the 30th floor Monday morning without announcement, leaning against the reception desk as though he owned it. His smile, wide and wolfish, earned immediate attention from the staff. "Good morning, sunshine," he greeted Leah when she arrived with an armful of files. She blinked at him, caught off guard. "Excuse me? You're glowing. Must be the company you've been keeping," he teased, eyes flicking toward the glass-walled CEO's office. "I have work to do," she said evenly, brushing past. "Work, work, work," he mused, following her like a shadow. "Don't you ever get tired of living on the straight line? A woman like you deserves more than just carrying coffee and calendars for my cousin." Leah set the folders down harder than she meant to. "A woman like me deserves respect. Which starts with you stepping back." Cyrus laughed, clearly delighted. "Sharp tongue. No wonder he keeps you around." The glass door opened. Tadeo stood there, expression stone. "Cyrus. Cousin." Cyrus spread his arms wide. "Don't be so grim. I was just welcoming your secretary properly. She doesn't need your welcome." Tadeo's voice cut like a blade. "Or your games." For a moment, silence thickened. Then Cyrus grinned wider as if he'd won something. "Games keep life interesting, Tadeo's. Don't pretend you don't need them." Boardroom tension. That afternoon, the boardroom buzzed with directors and assistants. Cyrus slid into a chair at the far end, tossing his jacket carelessly over the back. Leah, standing with her notepad, felt the weight of his eyes on her every few minutes. During a break, he leaned close enough for only her to hear. "You know, Velasquez, men like my cousin burn out fast. They're all work, no soul. If you're smart, you'll bet on someone who knows how to enjoy life." Leah stiffened. "I don't bet on people." "Then maybe people bet on you," he said smoothly before standing and rejoining the directors. From across the room, Tadeo's eyes narrowed. He had seen the exchange. After the meeting, when the board adjourned, Leah hurried to gather papers, but Tadeo's low voice stopped her. "Don't engage him." She looked up. "Sir?" "Cyrus. He thrives on reaction. Don't give him one." "I wasn't." She stopped, then sighed. "He's difficult to ignore." Tadeo's gaze held hers, sharper than usual. "Ignore him anyway." For a second it felt less like an order and more like concern. The elevator incident. 2 days later, the elevator stalled briefly between floors with only 3 people inside. Leah, Cyrus, and a junior analyst. The analyst fidgeted, eyes darting between them. Cyrus leaned back against the mirrored wall, hands in his pockets. "So," he said casually, "what's it like being the most talked about woman in this building?" Leah kept her eyes on the panel. "Unpleasant." "Unpleasant?" "I'd say enviable. Half the women here would kill for half your attention." "Attention isn't respect," she shot back. His grin widened. "Touché. But tell me, do you honestly think Tadeo sees you as just a secretary?" Before she could answer, the elevator jolted and resumed its climb. The doors opened to reveal Tadeo's waiting in the hall. His eyes flicked from Leah's tense posture to Cyrus's smirk. "Out," he said flatly. Cyrus stepped forward, clapping his cousin's shoulder as he passed. "Careful, Tadeo's. When you guard something too tightly, people start to wonder what it's worth." Tadeo's didn't reply, but his jaw was steel as his eyes followed Leah until she stepped safely out. Flora's warning. That evening, Leah recounted the day to Flora over bowls of hot noodles in their tiny kitchen. "He's relentless," Leah admitted, rubbing her temples. "Cyrus, I mean. Always pushing, always hinting. And people notice." Flora slurped a noodle, then gave her a long look. "And your boss?" Leah hesitated. "He warned me not to engage. Like he was protecting me." Flora's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Oh, Leah. You're in deeper than you realize." Leah shook her head quickly. "No. I can't be. This is just a job." Flora's smile was soft but knowing. "Sometimes jobs change lives. Sometimes bosses do too." Midnight reflection. Later, in her small apartment, Leah sat by the window watching city lights blink against the dark. She thought of Cyrus's smirk, of the whispers that seemed to grow every day. She thought of Tadeo's voice, calm, steady, a wall against the storm. Her heart pulled in 2 directions. One filled with chaos and danger, the other with a discipline that somehow felt like safety. She touched the umbrella still propped by the door, the one he had lent her, and whispered to herself, "Don't get caught in their war." But deep down she knew she already was. The email came late Friday afternoon, stamped urgent. CO attendance confirmed for gala night, Saturday 7 p.m. Accompanied guest required. Leah frowned at the screen. Guest? That wasn't her problem. She started drafting the logistics memo when the glass door swung open. "Velasquez," Tadeo said. His tie was loosened, but his gaze was as sharp as ever. "Yes, sir? You'll accompany me to the gala." Her eyes widened. "Sir, I what? I'm not." "You manage my schedule, you'll manage the evening. Call it an extension of work hours." "That doesn't usually require a dress code," she said cautiously. He raised a brow. "It does now. 7 o'clock. The driver will pick you up." And just like that he was gone, leaving her blinking at the monitor, heart hammering. Flora's closet raid. The next day, Flora barged into Leah's room, arms full of borrowed dresses from cousins and friends. "You're going to a gala with the CEO," she declared. "You can't show up looking like you came straight from the filing cabinet." "Flora." "No arguments. Try this one first." By the time the sun dipped low, Leah stood in front of the mirror in a simple navy gown that skimmed her frame. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders, a touch of gloss on her lips. She hardly recognized herself. Flora clasped her hands dramatically. "If he doesn't fall off his high horse tonight, he's not human." "Stop it," Leah muttered, cheeks warm. But in her chest, something fluttered, half dread, half something she didn't want to name. The gala. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and champagne flutes. Men in tuxedos and women in jewels floated from group to group, laughter bubbling like the champagne itself. When Leah stepped in beside Tadeo's, conversations faltered. Heads turned. The rumors had grown legs and tonight they were sprinting. "Is that her? The secretary? Looks more like a fiancé than an assistant." She tried to ignore it, but every whisper felt like a needle. Tadeo's, however, was a fortress, face composed, stride steady, hand at her back guiding her through the crowd. At the first cluster of directors, he introduced her without hesitation. "Miss Velasquez, my secretary." The word should have cut the gossip. Instead, it only sharpened curiosity. Eyes lingered longer than politeness allowed. Smiles curled with suggestion. And then, like a shadow in silk, Cyrus appeared. "Cyrus at play." "Cousin," Cyrus drawled, lifting a glass of wine. "And his ever-loyal shadow." He bowed slightly to Leah, eyes glinting. "I must say, Velasquez, you clean up dangerously well." "Cyrus," Tadeo said flatly. "Oh, relax. It's a party." Cyrus circled them, voice pitched just loud enough for nearby ears. "Though I must admit, Tadeo's bringing your secretary as your date? Bull. Or desperate." Leah's face burned. She opened her mouth, but Tadeo's voice cut clean through. "She's here because I asked her to be." The simplicity of it silenced the nearby laughter. Cyrus tilted his head, studying his cousin. Then he smiled, sharp as glass. "Careful, Tadeo's. Words like that sound almost possessive." He clinked his glass against Leah's, ignoring her stiff posture. "Enjoy the night, darling. You'll need it." With that, he melted back into the crowd, leaving the tension like smoke behind him. A dance. Later in the evening, after speeches and toasts, music swelled, violins and piano spilling across the floor. Couples drifted into dance. Leah tried to edge toward the refreshment table, but Tadeo's hand caught hers. "One dance," he said. "Not a question." "I don't. Just follow." And so she did. His hand rested firmly at her waist, guiding her steps across the polished floor. At first she stumbled, nerves prickling under every stare, every whisper. But then she felt the steadiness of his lead, the calm rhythm of his breath. The noise of the room dimmed. "You're nervous," he said quietly. "Everyone's watching. Let them." His voice was low, steady. "They've watched me all my life. You'll get used to it." Her eyes flicked up. For a heartbeat, his gaze softened, the iron edges easing. "You belong here more than they do," he murmured. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe she wasn't just a story for other people's gossip. The music swelled, and for that one fragile moment, she let herself be carried. After the gala. When the night ended, the driver pulled up to Leah's apartment. She gathered her dress, murmured thanks, ready to flee the confusion buzzing in her chest. But as she stepped out, Tadeo said, "Velasquez." She turned. "Don't let Cyrus's words get in your head." His eyes were shadowed, unreadable. "He likes to break things just to see if they can be fixed." She nodded slowly. "And you?" His jaw tightened. "I don't break what I intend to keep." The door shut before she could ask what he meant. She stood on the curb, dress whispering around her legs, heart pounding with questions that wouldn't quiet. Monday morning arrived with the weight of a storm that hadn't passed. The gala photos had spread like wildfire, Tadeo's in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, Leah glowing at his side in the navy gown. The captions were merciless. CO brings mysterious woman to gala. Everhart heir ditches socialites for new flame? Secretary or fiancé? By the time Leah walked through the glass doors of Everhart and Company, whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were full-blown conversations that fell silent only when she passed. "Morning," she greeted softly at the reception desk, but the smile she got back was tinged with curiosity, not warmth. At her desk, a bouquet of red roses already waited. No card, just bold scarlet blooms. She froze, heart stumbling. Before she could move them, Cyrus strolled by, whistling. "Beautiful, aren't they? Red suits you." He leaned down, lowering his voice. "I wonder what your boss will say when he sees them." "I don't want them," Leah said firmly. "Then throw them out," Cyrus teased, grin sharp. "But that's the thing about flowers, they leave their scent behind." He walked away before she could answer, his laughter echoing in the hall. Whispers in the halls. The rest of the day was no kinder. In the pantry, two assistants accidentally left a magazine open on the table, with a blurry photo of her dancing with Tadeo's, his hand at her waist. In the elevator, someone muttered just loud enough, "From orphanage to Everhart's ballroom, quite the promotion." Leah clenched her jaw, refusing to give them the satisfaction of reaction. But each word burrowed deeper until the weight felt almost unbearable. By late afternoon, she excused herself to the restroom, gripping the sink edge, staring at her reflection. Her makeup was smudged from the long day, but it wasn't that. It was the doubt creeping in, doubt about her job, her place, her strength. Am I just what they say? A rumor wearing heels? The CEO's intervention. When she returned to her desk, Tadeo's was waiting. He leaned against her chair, arms folded, expression unreadable. "You look pale," he said. "I'm fine," she answered quickly. "You're not." His voice softened just slightly. "Sit." She obeyed, too tired to argue. He studied her, eyes narrowing. "The whispers are getting to you." "They're everywhere," she admitted, her voice breaking despite herself. "Everywhere I go, people look at me like I don't belong here. Like I'm some intruder who tricked her way into this building." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he walked around to her desk, picked up the bouquet of roses, and dropped them unceremoniously into the trash bin. "They don't decide where you belong," he said, his tone like steel. "I do. And as long as you work for me, you belong here." Her breath caught. He added, quieter, "Don't let Cyrus or anyone else write your story for you." She stared at him, stunned by the certainty in his words. Why do you care?" His gaze held hers, and for the first time the ice cracked. "Because I don't break what I intend to keep." Her chest tightened, the echo of his words from the gala hitting her harder now. Late night. That evening, long after most of the floor had emptied, Leah stayed behind, finishing reports. The quiet was soothing, a balm against the day's noise. As she gathered her things, she noticed a small box on her desk. No roses, no theatrics, just a plain black box tied with string. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a silver pen, sleek and simple, with her initials engraved. A note lay beneath, "For when you write your own story. T." Her hands trembled as she held it. No one had ever given her something so thoughtful, so quietly meaningful. She looked out the window at the city lights, the pen warm in her hand, and for the first time in days the whispers didn't matter. Because in that moment she realized something terrifying and wonderful. The ice around his heart wasn't unbreakable. And hers was already beginning to melt. The email subject line was blunt: "Business trip, Cebu branch inspection." Leah skimmed the itinerary: 2 days, 1 night. Meetings with regional managers, property site visits, and a client dinner. She exhaled. Straightforward enough. But then her eyes caught the second line: "Accompanying staff, Executive Secretary L. Velasquez." Her heart stuttered. A trip. Overnight. With him. The flight. At the airport, she tried to keep her distance. Tadeo's walked ahead, crisp in his gray suit, every step measured. People stared, he always drew attention, but this time they stared at her too, whispers curling in the air. She clutched her boarding pass tighter. "I don't know why I need to be here," she muttered under her breath. "Because I said so," he replied without turning, as though he'd heard her anyway. On the plane he sat by the window, leaving her the aisle. For the first 20 minutes, silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of engines. Then a flight attendant leaned in, cheeks pink. "Mr. Everhart, would you like a drink?" "Water," he said shortly. Her eyes darted to Leah. "And for your wife?" Leah nearly choked. I'm not. She'll have water too, Tadeos cut in smoothly, not even glancing up. The attendant beamed, retreating. Leah turned to him, furious whisper spilling out. Why didn't you correct her? Because it wasn't worth the breath. That's not. Velasquez, he interrupted, voice low, you're wasting energy fighting ghosts. Focus on the living. Her cheeks burned. She faced forward, but the warmth of his words lingered far longer than the embarrassment. The hotel. The Cebu branch had booked them into the same five-star hotel as their clients. Leah nearly dropped her key card when the clerk said, adjacent suites, 15th floor. In her room she paced. The city view glittered, the sheets smelled faintly of jasmine, but her chest was tight. This is just work. Just work. A knock came. She opened the door to find Tadeos, jacket off, sleeves rolled. He held a folder. Meeting notes. Review them tonight. His eyes flicked over her, pausing at her plain blouse and pencil skirt. Not judgmental, just assessing. Dinner's in an hour. Wear something appropriate. Her chin lifted. What I wear doesn't affect the contract. Everything affects the contract, he said simply, then turned away. The dinner. The restaurant was candlelit, filled with soft music and sharper business smiles. Leah sat beside Tadeos, taking notes as the conversation flowed about numbers, expansions, risks. She tried to focus, but every time his hand brushed the table near hers, her pulse skipped. At one point, a client leaned toward her. And what do you think, Miss Velasquez? She froze. She wasn't supposed to answer. But Tadeos's eyes flicked to hers, steady, expectant. She cleared her throat. I think your proposal works if we emphasize community partnerships. Long-term trust is better than short-term numbers. Silence. Then the client broke into a grin. Smart. I like her. Later, when the plates were cleared and contracts signed, Tadeos leaned close enough that only she heard. Good answer. Her cheeks warmed. I wasn't sure. You were right, he said firmly. Remember that. The balcony. Back at the hotel, sleep eluded her. She stepped onto the balcony, the warm air brushing her skin. The city sparkled below, alive with neon and motion. A voice startled her. You'll catch a chill. She turned. Tadeos stood at the connecting balcony, leaning on the rail. The glow of the city reflected in his eyes. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. Neither could I. For a moment, silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the streets below. Then she said softly, Do you ever get tired? Of all of it, the weight, the eyes, the whispers. He looked at her, and in that rare unguarded second the ice cracked again. Every day. Her breath caught. Then why keep going? Because people depend on me. Because I don't know who I am without it. His jaw tightened. And because stopping feels like weakness. Her heart ached at the honesty. She wanted to reach out, to say something that would ease that iron burden. Instead she whispered, Even ice breaks, Tadeos. Maybe it's not weakness. Maybe it's human. His gaze held hers across the small gap between balconies, heavy with something neither of them dared name. Go inside, he said finally, voice low. Before I forget, I'm your boss. Her pulse thundered. She nodded, retreating into her room. But long after she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the memory of his voice lingered, rough, dangerous, real. The return flight from Cebu should have been routine. Instead, it became the spark that set the company ablaze. Someone, no one knew who, had snapped photos at the dinner. Tadeos leaning toward Leah, his gaze intent, her smile soft in the candlelight. By Monday morning, the images were everywhere. On gossip blogs, finance newsletters, even whispered through the halls of Everhart and Company. CEO Everhart seen with mystery woman in Cebu. Romance or scandal? Secretary or lover? Leah's stomach twisted as she walked past the reception desk. Heads turned, eyes sharpened. By the time she reached her desk, an email from HR already waited. Urgent meeting. 2 p.m. Her hands trembled on the keyboard. The clash. Inside the office, Tadeos stood by the window, jaw clenched as he scrolled his phone. The photos glowed on the screen. Who leaked these? Leah asked, her voice breaking. Doesn't matter. His voice was flat. The damage is done. Her chest tightened. It matters to me. Everyone thinks. They can think whatever they want, he snapped. Her eyes stung. Easy for you to say. You're the CEO. I'm just. His head whipped toward her. Don't you dare say just. She froze. You are not just anything, he said, voice low, fierce. You've worked harder than anyone here. You've saved deals my executives couldn't. You've stood your ground against Cyrus when others crumbled. Her throat tightened. Then why does it feel like I'm drowning while you're standing on the shore? The silence that followed was heavy, raw. Finally, he said quietly, because if I dive in after you, I don't know if I'll come back. HR's ultimatum. At 2 o'clock sharp, Leah sat across from the HR director, a woman with polite eyes and sharp nails. Miss Velasquez, the board is concerned. The photographs, the rumors, they undermine our reputation. We must protect the company image. Leah swallowed. And what does that mean? The woman's smile was thin. It means we recommend you resign. Quietly. With severance. It will smooth things over. Her heart plummeted. Resign? I didn't do anything wrong. Perception is reality in business, the director replied. And right now, perception is against you. When Leah left the room, the hall seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Everything she had fought for, the chance to prove herself, the dignity she had clung to, was slipping away. The rooftop. She found herself on the rooftop, wind whipping her hair, city spread wide below. She hugged herself against the chill, eyes stinging with unshed tears. The door opened behind her. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Velasquez, Tadeo said, voice rough. They want me to resign, she whispered. As if I'm disposable. You're not. Her laugh was bitter. Tell that to HR. Tell that to the board. To everyone whispering my name like it's poison. He stepped closer, his presence radiating heat even in the cold wind. I told them no. She turned, startled. What? I told them you're not leaving. If they want to push, they'll push against me. Her breath caught. What? Why would you risk that? His jaw tightened, but his eyes, cold steel so often, were burning now. Because I can lose the company. I can't lose you. Her heart stopped. Tadeo's. For a moment, the world shrank to the space between them. The raw confession hanging in the air, the tension that had been building for weeks snapping taut. He lifted a hand, almost touching her cheek, then stopped, fingers trembling inches away. If I cross this line, there's no going back. Her voice was a whisper. Maybe there's nothing left to go back to. And in that breath, the ice shattered. His hand cupped her face and his mouth claimed hers, fierce, desperate, the kiss of a man who had spent too long denying, too long burying what burned beneath. The rooftop spun, the city roared, but all Leah knew was the heat of his lips, the truth in his touch. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. This, he whispered, is the breaking point. And I'm not letting go. The boardroom was a battlefield dressed in mahogany and glass. 12 directors sat around the oval table, their suits crisp, their gazes sharper than knives. At the head sat Tadeo's, unflinching, while Leah occupied a chair near the wall, her presence tolerated but unwelcome. On the screen, the photographs from Cebu glowed like evidence in a trial. Mr. Everhart, one director began, voice cool, we are not in the business of defending scandals. Your association with your secretary has placed the company's reputation at risk. Another added, our investors are already asking questions. Contracts are delicate. Confidence is fragile. Cyrus leaned back in his chair at the far end, lips curved in a smirk. Perception, dear cousin, is currency. And right now you're bankrupting us. Leah's stomach twisted. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the weight of their stares pressed her into silence. Tadeo's voice cut through. This company's worth is built on performance, not gossip. Profits are up. Contracts secured. Expansion underway. If our investors are so fragile, then perhaps they invest in the wrong man. Murmurs rippled across the table. Cyrus tapped a finger against the wood, mock thoughtful. Or perhaps they invest in the wrong couple. His eyes slid toward Leah. Tell me, Velasquez, how does it feel knowing your career rests on his affection? Her pulse hammered. Every instinct told her to stay silent. But then she remembered the rooftop, the fire in Tadeo's eyes when he said, I can't lose you. She straightened. My career rests on my work. I've given nothing less than my best since the day I walked in here. Anyone who doubts that can read the reports I've written, the contracts I've prepared, the meetings I've managed. If people want to reduce me to gossip, that's their weakness, not mine. The room stilled. For the first time, Cyrus's smirk faltered. The walkout. When the meeting adjourned, tension still thick in the air, Leah followed Tadeo's into the hall. He walked fast, jaw tight. You shouldn't have spoken, he muttered. Her chest clenched. I couldn't just sit there while they. I can handle them. Then let me handle myself. The words burst out sharper than she intended. She stopped, breath shaking. I'm not your weakness, Tadeo's. And I won't let anyone treat me like one. For a moment, he stared at her, the ice in his expression cracking just enough to reveal something raw beneath. You're right, he said finally, voice low. You're not my weakness. You're my line in the sand. Before she could answer, Cyrus's voice echoed down the corridor. Touching, he drawled, stepping into view. But lines in the sand wash away quickly, cousin. Especially when tides change. Tadeo's jaw tightened. Stay out of this. Oh, but this is my business, Cyrus purred. The board is restless. Investors nervous. If you fall, guess who they'll look to next? His grin widened. And when that happens, maybe Miss Velasquez will realize who the real survivor is. Leah met his gaze, unflinching. I'd rather stand in the storm than hide under your shadow. Cyrus's smile froze, thin as glass, before he turned and strolled away. Quiet after the war. Back in his office, the city lights glowed behind Tadeo's as he stood by the window, silent. Leah hovered by the desk, unsure. Finally he said, You shouldn't have to fight my battles. She stepped closer. And you shouldn't have to fight them alone. He turned then, and for once the weight of his control slipped. His eyes, storm-dark, burning, met hers with a truth he couldn't cage anymore. This is bigger than both of us, he said quietly. But if you walk away now, you save yourself. No more rumors. No more whispers. Just peace. Her heart twisted. And if I don't? His voice dropped, ragged. Then you stand with me. Against them all. But it won't be easy. She searched his face, every scar of responsibility etched into his features. And then she answered, steady. Then let it be hard. Because I'm not leaving. For a long moment, neither moved. Then slowly the corner of his mouth curved, not quite a smile but close. Then we fight, he murmured. And in the silence that followed, Leah felt something stronger than fear, stronger than whispers, stronger even than the board's disapproval. She felt the beginning of them. The storm outside mirrored the tension inside. Rain lashed against the glass walls of the Everhart Tower, thunder rolling over the city. Leah sat at her desk, the engraved silver pen heavy in her hand. She had no idea that tonight the heaviest secret of all would surface. The file. It started with a mistake. She had gone into the records room to file minutes from the board meeting, her thoughts still swirling with Cyrus's smirk and Tadeo's vow. On the desk lay a folder left carelessly open. Scholarship Program, Orphanage Beneficiaries. Her breath caught. The name leaped at her from the page. Velasquez, Leah. Hands trembling, she scanned the document. Sponsorship began at age 12. Full tuition, living expenses, medical coverage, all underwritten by Everhart Trust. But the signature at the bottom froze her blood. Tadeo's R. Everhart. The air seemed to vanish. She clutched the folder, heart racing. All these years, it was him? The confrontation. She found him in his office, tie loosened, rain painting streaks down the windows behind him. He looked up when she entered, his eyes narrowing at the folder in her hands. You knew, she whispered. His jaw tightened. You weren't supposed to see that. Her voice shook. So it's true. You've been my sponsor all this time. Why didn't you tell me? He set his pen down slowly, deliberately. Because it wasn't about me. It was about you. You deserved a chance without strings, without gratitude hanging over your head. Her eyes burned. You let me think I was alone. Do you know how many nights I prayed for the person who saved me, the person who gave me a future? You were right there and you said nothing. His hands curled into fists. If I told you, it would have changed everything. You would have felt indebted. And I didn't want your gratitude, Leah. I wanted your freedom. Tears spilled before she could stop them. And what about now? Was all of this, she gestured helplessly between them to the space charged with unspoken words, was this just charity too? His face twisted, anguish breaking through the armor. He crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping inches from her. No, he said hoarsely. This, us, has nothing to do with charity. It's the only selfish thing I've ever wanted in my life. The collapse. She staggered back, overwhelmed. Do you hear yourself? You were my savior in the shadows and now you're my boss, my. You're what? He demanded, voice breaking. Say it. Her chest heaved. My weakness. Silence cracked like thunder. His eyes closed as though the word cut deeper than any insult Cyrus had ever thrown. Then softly he said, maybe that's what love is. A weakness we choose. Her breath caught. Don't. I won't apologize for helping you, he said firmly. And I won't apologize for wanting you now. The board, the rumors, my family, I can fight them all. But if you walk away, I can't fight that. Decision at midnight. That night, back in her apartment, Leah sat in darkness, folder open on the table. The rain had eased, but the storm inside her had not. Every line of the document screamed of years of sacrifice, money, effort, attention, all quietly given by the man she now both resented and loved. Flora's words echoed in her mind, grandmothers know things. Complicated usually means interesting. Her phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen. No more secrets. Meet me tomorrow. Rooftop. T. She clutched the phone to her chest, torn between fear and the undeniable pull of truth. For the first time she realized, this wasn't just about a job or gossip or even survival. It was about choosing whether the past bound them or set them free. The next evening, the city glowed under a bruised purple sky. Leah's heart pounded as she climbed the last flight of stairs, the rooftop door creaking open to the familiar rush of wind. Tadeo's was already there, standing by the edge, the lights of the skyline painting his figure in gold and shadow. He didn't turn when she stepped out. "You came," he said softly. "I wasn't sure I should." Her voice carried, fragile against the wind. He faced her then, eyes darker than the night behind him. "But you did. That's enough." The truth laid bare. She held up the folder she still carried. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? About the scholarship. About everything." His gaze dropped to the folder, then back to her face. "Because I didn't want you to feel chained to me. I didn't want your life, your choices, to be colored by gratitude or guilt." Her throat tightened. "But you let me believe I had no one. That I was alone. I thought I was protecting you," he said hoarsely. "I was wrong." The honesty in his voice cut through her anger like a blade through silk. She whispered, "Do you know how many nights I wondered who it was? Who cared enough to keep me alive, to give me a chance? And all this time, it was you." His expression cracked, pain and longing spilling through. "I wanted to tell you 1,000 times. But if I did, I knew I'd want more. And I didn't think I had the right." The confession. The wind tugged at her hair, at her dress, as if urging her closer. She took a step, then another, until they stood only inches apart. "So what now, Tadeos?" she asked, voice trembling. "I'm your secretary. Your former beneficiary. The board already wants me gone. Cyrus won't stop until he tears us apart. Is this even possible?" His hand rose slowly, hesitating before brushing against her cheek. His touch was warm, grounding. "I don't care what they say," he murmured. "I don't care what it costs. All my life I've lived for the company, for control, for expectations. But when I'm with you, I feel alive. And for once, I want to choose that over everything else." Her breath hitched. "And what if choosing me destroys everything you've built?" "Then let it fall," he said fiercely. "I can rebuild a company. I can't rebuild losing you." The words shattered the last of her defenses. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "You're impossible. And you're unforgettable," he answered before pulling her into his arms. The kiss. Their lips met, slow at first, then desperate, years of restraint burning away in an instant. The city roared below, but up here, it was just them. Two hearts colliding in the storm they'd both tried so hard to resist. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, he whispered, "Say it, Leah. Tell me you feel it too." Her chest heaved, but the truth burst free at last. "I love you, Tadeos. I think I always have." The relief, the raw joy in his eyes, nearly undid her. He held her tighter, as though anchoring himself in her presence. "I love you," he said simply. "Not as your sponsor. Not as your boss. Just as a man who can't breathe without you." The choice. But reality pressed in even in their embrace. She pulled back slightly, her voice steadier now. "Then we fight. Together. Against the board, against Cyrus, against the whispers." He nodded, jaw firm. "Together." For the first time she saw not the cold CEO, not the distant sponsor, but the man beneath it all, a man willing to risk everything for her. And as the storm clouds broke above them, stars piercing through the dark, Leah knew, whatever came next, this was the moment their story truly began. The boardroom felt colder than usual that morning. The long glass table gleamed under sterile light, every leather chair occupied. Whispers curled like smoke as directors exchanged wary glances. At the head, Cyrus sat where Tadeos normally did, lips curved in a victorious smile. When Tadeos and Leah entered, the murmurs stopped. Well, Cyrus drawled, rising slightly. "The prodigal CEO returns. Tell me, cousin, did the secretary accompany you for business or pleasure this time?" Leah's nails dug into her palm, but Tadeos's voice was steel. "Sit down, Cyrus. This isn't your stage. The older directors shifted uncomfortably. One cleared his throat. Mr. Everhart, concerns remain. The photographs, the whispers, it's damaging. Investors question your judgment. Perhaps, temporary suspension would allow stability to return. Cyrus's smirk widened. A fine idea. I'd be happy to step in, of course. For the company's sake. The evidence. Before Tadeos could respond, Leah stepped forward. Her hands shook, but her voice carried. If stability is what you want, then you should know the truth. Cyrus has been feeding the gossip. He planted the roses on my desk. He leaked the photos from Cebu. All to undermine Tadeos. Gasps rippled through the room. Cyrus laughed, feigning disbelief. Proof, darling? Or are you just bitter? Leah pulled out her phone, projecting an email onto the screen. Forwarded anonymously, but with his signature digital trail intact. Ensure these photos reach the press. Label her as his mistress. Investors will panic and the board will have no choice. The silence that followed was deafening. Cyrus's mask cracked. That could be fabricated. Tadeos' voice was calm, lethal. It isn't. I had IT verify it this morning. Stand. The directors shifted, their earlier certainty crumbling. If this is true, one muttered, then Cyrus has been sabotaging the very company he claims to protect. Cyrus slammed his fist against the table. I did what needed to be done. He's weak, blinded by some orphan girl who doesn't belong here. Leah flinched, but Tadeos rose, his presence filling the room. Don't you dare, he said, voice low and dangerous. She belongs here more than you ever will. She's worked harder, sacrificed more, and stood taller than men who hide behind whispers. You want to question strength? Look at her. Every eye in the room turned to Leah, standing steady despite the tremor in her chest. For the first time she didn't feel small. The verdict. One by one the directors murmured agreement. Words like sabotage, unethical, and removal filled the air. Finally the chairman banged the gavel. Effective immediately, Cyrus Everhart is stripped of authority. Mr. Tadeos Everhart remains CEO. Meeting adjourned. The room erupted in chatter, but Leah only heard the rush of blood in her ears. Cyrus's glare burned into her as security escorted him out. This isn't over, he hissed, but the slam of the door said otherwise. Aftermath. When the room cleared, Tadeos turned to her. For once, the weight of leadership seemed lighter on his shoulders. You didn't have to risk yourself, he said quietly. She met his gaze steady. Yes, I did. Because I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm fighting, with you. For a long moment, he said nothing, simply watching her with an expression that was both fierce and unbearably tender. Then he reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Then together it is. Always. The storm had passed. For the first time in months, the Everhart building felt calm. No whispers in the hallways. No cameras outside the doors. Just the hum of normal work returning. But for Leah nothing felt normal. She wasn't just another secretary anymore. She was the woman who had stood in front of the board, who had faced down Cyrus, who had chosen to fight beside Tadeos when walking away would have been easier. Morning light. On a quiet morning, she walked into Tadeos' office with coffee in one hand and the silver pen in the other. He looked up from his laptop and for once the hard edge of CO melted into something softer. You're early, he murmured. I wanted to be, she said simply. He leaned back, studying her. Do you realize what you've done? You didn't just save me. You saved this company. Her smile was small but real. We saved it. Together. For a moment, silence hung between them, comfortable, warm. Then he reached across the desk, covering her hand with his. No audience. No board. Just them. A life beyond work. That weekend he took her out of the city. Away from glass towers and flashing headlines, they drove to the coast where the air smelled of salt and the horizon stretched endlessly. They walked barefoot on the sand, shoes in hand, waves licking at their feet. Do you ever think about what comes after all this? She asked. He glanced at her, brow raised. After what? The company. The battles. The whispers. What's left when it's just you? He was quiet for a long moment, the ocean filling the silence. Then he said softly, You. If I have you, that's enough. Her heart swelled, and for the first time she believed him. Not the CEO, not the cold man who once hid behind walls, but the man who had chosen love over power. Full circle. Months later, at a small charity event for the orphanage where Leah had grown up, she stood on stage with him at her side. Children laughed in the crowd, volunteers bustled. and for the first time in years she didn't feel like a girl abandoned by the world. She felt like a woman who had found her place in it. When she spoke into the microphone, her voice was steady. I used to believe that my story was written for me, that poverty, loss, and silence would define me. But someone gave me a chance. And then I learned the truth. Chances are only the beginning. What we do with them, how we fight for them, that's what defines us. Her eyes found Tadeo's in the crowd. He smiled, pride shining clear, and her chest ached with gratitude and love. The promise. That night, as they stood under the stars, he took her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. No board. No contracts. No expectations, he said quietly. Just us. Do you still want that? She squeezed his hand, her answer simple. Always. And when he kissed her, gentle this time, not fierce or desperate, it felt like a vow. Not of perfection, not of an easy road, but of something real. A new dawn.